The Paddy Power Half Hour on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
You're very welcome along to the Paddy Power Half Hour. Over the next half an hour, we're going to look ahead to the weekend's Premier League action, and our football coverage is brought to you with Paddy Power. For information on responsible gambling, you can visit dunlewy.net. Joined in studio by Diallo and Enda Coll. Before we actually get into the fixtures, big news in the last few minutes, and little Christmas present for Liverpool fans. Jurgen Klopp has signed the new contract 2024, and Raf, I've often wondered what Liverpool would be like without Jurgen Klopp as the manager. Would they go back to what they were before he took over, where some seasons they're good, some seasons they're not so good, whereas obviously Klopp has turned things around, but Liverpool fans don't have to think like that now for a few years.
No, and it's I guess it's like the early years, the first half of like Arsene Wenger's year, where he personified what the club was, and everything seemed to be well structured, everything worked. Like Wenger had David Dean, Klopp of course has Michael Edwards, the sporting director. So everything is well, I suppose it's well established now for the next number of years. Obviously, it doesn't mean Klopp is going to have success all the way through, because we saw at Dortmund towards the end, they got burnt out. You'd like to think the way he has set up this Liverpool team, where they still press but not as intensely as that Dortmund team, that they should be okay heading into the future.
That's the thing, Enda, as well. What's notable since he came in 2015, he's learnt season on season. So he realised soon enough that there's no winter break, and his team were running out of legs, especially 3 years ago. They got to January and they didn't win a game in January. They just completely fell off a cliff. Then, you know, he obviously strengthened his squad, but he curtailed things as well. He has them, as Raf mentioned, they don't press the same way. It's not always heavy metal football like it used to be.
Yeah, it's a bit more indie rock, if you want to call it that.
Soft rock.
Soft rock.
Not quite Christian rock, though.
You know, when you're moving away from the 80s rock into the 90s era of kind of Britpop rock, it's kind of like that. It's more mature. I think Klopp has he's adapted well to the Premier League, in the sense that the Bundesliga, while it's a strong enough league, as you go further down the table, the teams do get weaker, whereas the Premier League, the smaller sides always have a chance of, I'd say, getting a result, because
games.
There are no easy games in the Premier League. It's the strongest league in the world, as they say.
World, yeah.
I swear I'm not a PR man for the Premier League, but the smaller teams will park the bus and they will be physical, and playing that gung-ho football that he played in the first 2 years in charge of Liverpool, it just doesn't work. It's not sustainable. It does work, but it's not sustainable across the entire season, because, as you say, you do get tired, and when teams play a deeper line, it's harder to actually get past that. So his style of football has matured, and he is now Liverpool playing the best football in the world. So it's no wonder that Liverpool are so keen to keep a hold on him.
Even, Raf, even within the game, there's games, I think, back to when they would go hell for leather and they'd tire during games. Now, because he has someone like Virgil van Dijk and he has a more reliable goalkeeper, they can actually control games a bit better. They can take their foot off the gas, and if something happens where they need a goal in the last 20 minutes, they have that energy left over. It's no coincidence they score a lot of late goals.
Yeah, and with Van Dijk there, of course, as well, we saw at the start of the season they were leaking a few goals because they had their defensive line a lot higher, and I think it's part of that. You have extra control and you can trust Van Dijk to be there. You have a goalkeeper like Alisson who can play between those lines as well, and it just means, instead of, in terms of the pressing, kind of running from deep and then charging at whatever centre backs are on the ball, you can actually start from a higher position. So Salah starts higher, Firmino starts higher up the field, Mane starts higher up the field, so there's not as much energy being expended. They're just in position the whole time, and they can trust Van Dijk, his pace, his positioning, to kind of marshal that line. And obviously Matip as well, before his injury, had become key.
Like Lovren's playing very well at the moment as well. When Klopp took over in 2015, obviously we had seen what he did with Dortmund, and there was a real sense from Liverpool supporters that Klopp was the perfect fit for Liverpool. And he has said himself today on signing his new contract, he felt when he was taking the job it was perfect, but he didn't think it was going to be this good. And he just can't. He said, I didn't want to contemplate not being there. But Van Dijk is somebody that, because of Klopp and who he is, he can get these players. Now, so often you see with transfer windows coming up, players are linked with clubs. more often than not, if a player is now linked with Liverpool, they'll get them. They want to play for Liverpool.
Yeah, it's a complete 180 from where they were when Klopp came in. It was how can Klopp improve the side, because they're not an attractive club for players to come to. Now it's the complete opposite, and at that stage as well, Manchester United were a club that had the buying power. Now it's Liverpool, and if you're looking at the kind of the age demographic of people that are supporting Liverpool, it's starting to get younger again. It was getting to the stage where we thought that Liverpool were going to become irrelevant as a club, to a sense of where they were relative to where they were beforehand. But now the club that people want to support is Liverpool, because they're playing the best football, they've got the best players in the Premier League, and they've got a manager who's just so likeable.
Okay.
It just fits.
So they play Watford tomorrow, final Premier League game before Christmas, before most of the squad goes off to Qatar. A few hang back and play the League Cup game against Villa. Do you see any problems against Watford? Nigel Pearson's first game.
No.
The new manager bounce? No? Would the new manager bounce for Nigel Pearson, would a good bounce be losing 2-0? Something like that, where you don't get the confidence absolutely knocked out of you, what little confidence they have left.
It's a bit of a free hit, I think, in that sense, because nobody expects them to do it. Obviously, they're bottom of the table. I think they're the only club of the 92 in the top 4 divisions not to have got to double figures in terms of goals. So they're not expected to score at all. I think they've been trashed every time they've been to Anfield the last 3 times as well.
Like 6, there was 6, there was 5
so
a
it's
couple of times.
Yeah, so a 2-0 defeat would actually be a sign of progress, I guess, in that sense.
There's got to be more in these Watford players.
Yeah, I don't think they're that bad. They certainly didn't even appear on my radar when you were picking teams to go down.
No, not at all. Like, if you look at their front line alone, and Pereira, Deulofeu, and even
Deeney's been
like Troy Deeney, like
injured, and that has been a bit of an issue, because he does give you that physicality. But do you know what? I say that now, but when you look at the end of the season, apart from the FA Cup, under Javi Gracia, their form completely dipped. But it was kind of masked by the fact that they got to the cup final.
But even if you look at some of the talk around Watford last year, are they potential Europa League candidates? And Troy Deeney, I remember last year, slimmed down incredibly. Like, he lost a couple of stone, and they were on fire last year. So you'd have to wonder what went on behind the scenes during the summer that has made them just down tools the way they have this year. This week I can't see any bounce back, even under the Nigel Pearson new manager bounce, or whatever you want to call it. But if I were Liverpool, I'd be resting all the players that I possibly could and treat this like an FA Cup game, and take Mane out of the team, protect him. He's been playing a lot of football this year. Take Salah out of the team, maybe start Shaqiri, start some of the younger players.
Probably what he tends to do, he'd probably pick one of the 3.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't be surprised if Mane, maybe he might take Mane and Firmino out, and he could start Salah.
Yeah, well, we talked about this being a free hit for Watford. Like, it's probably a free hit for Liverpool as well if they went out with a younger side and protected some of their younger players. If they drop points, it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. I mean, look,
it's just a momentum thing.
Yeah, they have to. They've got the foot down. They have to keep it down. Like, they can't be dropping points against the bottom team, given what's going to happen in the next few weeks. And that kind of brings us on to tomorrow's game. So Liverpool-Watford's 12:30. Then at 3 o'clock, you've got Leicester and Norwich. So you've got the team second in the league against the team second from bottom. Now, Leicester, people are talking about them being the nearest rivals to Liverpool. 8 points in the difference. That's why I say, if Liverpool were to drop points, then Leicester surely are going to beat Norwich. But you're kind of looking ahead to the game on the 21st, Man City and Leicester, and then on the 26th, Leicester and Liverpool. That is going to tell us a lot about how good Leicester are. Like, they've won 8 in a row. I don't want to take anything away from Brendan Rodgers, but look at the teams they've beaten. Look at the teams they've lost to this season. When they've played the bigger teams, Liverpool, they lost at Old Trafford. They got a draw away to Chelsea, a game actually they could have won. And
to beat Arsenal, but they're not really a big team.
Not at the moment.
Not anymore.
We joked about that last week as well.
We did, but the joke keeps running. So
this should be an easy enough win for Leicester, you'd imagine, just because of the way that Norwich will come out. No, Norwich have been a little bit better in the last couple of weeks, but their dip in form should give Leicester enough momentum going into this game, as well as how well Leicester have been going. They were brilliant again last week. Probably lucky enough to come away with a win against Everton. But Jamie Vardy firing on all cylinders.
He scored again. He's on 8 in a row.
What's his record from the title winning?
His was 11.
It wouldn't surprise me if he went and beat that record this year. He's just
Well,
flying.
here's the thing though. If he gets it tomorrow, that's 9. 10th game against City, 11th game against Liverpool. Now he has scored against these teams. He's kind of the opposite of a flat track bully, where he tends to score against the bigger teams.
Yeah, no, he's been absolutely brilliant. I was watching the Villa game, and like the thing about him, you kind of know what he wants to do, and that he wants to play on the break, and then it's still difficult. Even if you set up to try and stop it, the spaces will always open up, and he'll always find a way to get through. I know he's had a couple of dips in form over the last 2 or 3 seasons, but he's one of the most reliable forwards.
Especially since Rodgers came in.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what Brendan Rodgers said to him. Well, I know they tweaked things, and he said you don't have to do as much running out in the channels. Like, I want you to stay in certain areas. But since Rodgers has taken over, Vardy has just gone to a different level. Sorry, gone back to the level of title-winning Vardy.
Yeah, he's been brilliant, and just the fact that he's following up on things too. He missed a couple of penalties, but again, he was following up on those, and when he stepped up to take the 2, I think they had 2 or 3 retakes this season, he's finished them off again. So his confidence hasn't taken a hit from any times he misses the chances. I suppose one thing that we spoke about Leicester this year was when James Maddison got injured, can they cope without him? They proved that they can. But if Jamie Vardy were to get injured, their replacement, Iheanacho's playing quite well now, but if he were to lead the line and be the main man for a couple of weeks, you'd worry about where Leicester's goals are going to come from if they weren't coming from the likes of set pieces. Jose Perez, I suppose, is another option that could come into the centre.
Tweak things,
but the thing with Perez and Iheanacho, they've been great as foils for Vardy, where they played that, if we remember, the Okazaki role of being kind of the second striker playing between the lines. They're quite good at that. As Enda said, I think if you're looking for somebody to lead the line, though, Vardy's your perfect man. I don't think Iheanacho is going to play in that exact same way in terms of being that spearhead.
Thinking about this during the week, this Leicester team play Ranieri's Leicester team that won the league. Who wins? Does Rodgers' Leicester have all the ball and Ranieri's Leicester invite them on and say, we're going to hit you on the break with Mahrez and Vardy?
I think Ranieri's Leicester would trump this Brendan Rodgers team. Brendan Rodgers' Leicester has a better squad. He plays probably better sustainable football, but I can't see this team breaking down, getting past Kante in the middle of midfield, because he was unplayable. Yeah,
and then all they do is they force you out wide, cross the ball, Huth and Morgan, head it clear.
When you look at it, it's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you look at that team, it's just the defence.
No, I agree. I think obviously the current Leicester team are definitely easier on the eye, but do we think they're title challengers, or will we wait until after the 26th to have this conversation?
I remember the year they won the league, I predicted them to get relegated that season. So twice bitten, or whatever the phrase is, I'm not going to make any predictions about them. They're there on merit at the moment, and momentum. As we said, in terms of Liverpool, it's really important. So if they keep the foot on the pedal and they get something out of the 2 big games coming, who knows?
If they're lucky with injuries, I don't see why not.
No European football either, and that was something that stood to them the year that they won the league, where, especially in the second half of the season, they're just focusing on one game.
Well, the only thing you could say is that the year that they won it with 74 points, I think.
Yeah.
And to get to Liverpool, or to get to that standard of finishing second place, they're going to have to get over 90. So it's a much tougher ask to finish second nowadays than it was when Leicester won that league. It was a bit of an anomaly that year.
Okay, well, let's talk about Manchester City. They're obviously away to Arsenal on Sunday. They're 6 points behind Leicester, and regardless of what happens this weekend, when City play Leicester next weekend, Leicester are going to be going to the Etihad ahead of them. Something that not many people would have predicted at the start of the season.
No, definitely not. And I even predicted City to win the derby last week, and obviously I got that one wrong. But you look at some of the statistics, and City are still leading a lot of the metrics. They concede fewer chances. The only thing is, when teams get chances against them, they tend to score, and they tend to be easier chances. City also create the most chances still, but there's something obviously off. It seems Sterling's not as potent in terms of he probably needs more chances to score goals. Aguero is obviously just missing for the last few weeks, even though Gabriel Jesus has done a decent job. But there is something missing there, and obviously I think the centre-back issue was a problem when they moved Fernandinho back, whereas he was the perfect sitter, and Rodri is only developing into that now.
Yeah, would they be better off, Enda? Here's one. Would they be better off with Fernandinho in central midfield and play Otamendi, who obviously Guardiola doesn't trust, so he wants to take Otamendi out of the team, but then he drops Fernandinho back? What would be a stronger City team? Otamendi with Fernandinho in that position in central midfield where he's been so good, or he basically becomes their best centre half, but then they miss him in central midfield.
Yeah, honestly, I'd move away from what he's doing at the minute and try a system. I know Otamendi's a bit lax at the back, but especially if you put him into a centre partnership with John Stones, it's recipe for a bit of a disaster there. But Fernandinho is, I think, what they are missing in midfield at the minute. He's a bit like Busquets. When Busquets was at his peak for Barcelona, people thought he was just a hacking merchant. He was just there to sweep up ball, but he was a key part of turning defence into attack. His passing was top notch, and so is Fernandinho's. Fernandinho does so much more than just intercept the ball, but he is great at doing that job. So for City to stop the counter-attacks that they're so weak from, they're going to need to get him in there and get his... and City fans can accuse me of being whatever, but Fernandinho is probably the best player at tactical fouls in the league. He gets away with so many of them, and that's what they're missing at the minute.
Like, how many times did United break at them last
United
Saturday?
Could have been 5-0 up
in the first half an hour was frightening.
Yeah.
Like they just, not only were they getting the ball in midfield, they were getting space to turn, and then once you get at that back four, you know, there's a feast awaiting for you.
The left back is it's a mess at the minute.
So he played Mendy away to Zagreb. So his kind of argument with leaving Mendy out at times is he can't play 2 games in a short space of time. So why play him in Zagreb? Save him for the weekend when it's clear Angelino isn't up to it.
No.
It's the reason that he let him go originally.
You'd be licking your lips if you saw Angelino start against your side, especially against the United side who are brilliant on the counter-attack, because you just know Daniel James is going to cause him all sorts of trouble. And it's mad to think that had City kept a hold of Fabian Delph, that Fabian Delph would be the best left-back in that City side again this year.
Yeah.
It's mad to think that.
Zinchenko obviously came on the other night, so he's not far off it, but he's not really the answer long-term either, and it's obviously a position that Guardiola has.
He's a midfielder by trade, isn't he? And then obviously he's done a decent job in a title-winning team last season. But I get the inference that maybe Mendy isn't as trusted by Guardiola, especially he's had the 2 knee injuries as well, so maybe he's not quite the same player. Yeah,
but he's surely got to be better than Angelino. Have Arsenal got anything in this game? It was a strange one watching never mind the European game, the game last Monday where West Ham were in complete control, Martinelli scores and Arsenal turn it around, but it seems like it's not a turning point. It didn't seem like it was a turning point.
They're still just ticking over Ljungberg, and
if they were playing anybody other than West Ham, I think they wouldn't have come back. It's just West Ham are an even bigger mess than Arsenal at the moment, but I don't see them getting anything out of City. It's just the defence is the main issue there. It costs them time and again against teams that are far weaker in terms of the forward lines. So you imagine even without Aguero, what would City do to a team that has David Luiz marshalling the back line? You'd worry.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that City have created the most chances in the Premier League this year. I think Arsenal have conceded the most chances in the Premier League this season, so that can only lead to one thing. But again, these big games, you don't know. Arsenal haven't beaten a top 6 side this year. They drew with United, drew with Leicester, lost Liverpool twice, once in the League Cup, and drew with Chelsea as well. So it's not gone well from this year, and I would say City probably have too much for them again this week.
Just on Arsenal, if you were Carlo Ancelotti, would you want to touch that job? Because you're inheriting a team with no defence, effectively.
Yeah, no defence. The team, there's issues there, and of course they don't get Champions League. There's a lot of players that are leaving, and there's also, I suppose, inferences as well that there are divides within the boardroom at the sporting director level, and would you really want to walk into that right now? I think you'd want to walk into a better structure, and he's better going into clubs where you have these experienced names who kind of know what they want to do, and he's just kind of not so much just a motivator. He's obviously very good tactically, but I think I've seen it's kind of like a horse whisperer, but for like talented stars in that kind of way, and he just gets them going really, and that's what worked at AC Milan, Real Madrid. These are people who can manage themselves to a degree. These Arsenal players can't do that.
Yeah. So that's Arsenal-Manchester City. That's a 4:30 kickoff. You'll actually be able to listen to that game on Off the Ball and News Talk on Sunday. I know Nathan Murphy and Gary Breen will be at the Emirates. Just looking at some of the other games on Sunday, Manchester United and Everton. So you play United, and if you give them a chance to counter-attack, they'll absolutely tear you to shreds. So Duncan Ferguson's going to be in charge on Sunday. Surely he can't just go there and think, right lads, let's have a go. And there is a way of having a go, but not in the way that the likes of City or even Brighton a few weeks ago did.
Yeah, well, they played 4-4-2 last week with Richarlison in the middle, with Calvert-Lewin, and they said that they hadn't really expected that at all. They didn't think Richarlison suited a centre role, but he definitely did, and it looks like he's probably going to play there for the rest of the season if Duncan Ferguson has a job. And if you were Duncan Ferguson, you probably would play 4-4-2 again this week and just sit back and work on the counter attack, because that's where oddly United are very weak at controlling counter attacks, and they can't break down strong defences. So if Everton do that, then United might not perform as well as they did last 3 games, because they were quite good during the week there as well.
Yeah, like Everton don't need to pack the midfield, because Man United's strength isn't going, maybe if Pogba was there, maybe you might put another extra midfielder in there.
Did you put Pogba back into the team? Because it's going too well at the moment.
No.
And
he's back in training next week, as far as I know.
Look, we know he's talented, but one thing watching the United team in the last few weeks is the effort, and they're just getting on with their business. And okay, the likes of Rashford and James are making headlines, but they're making them for what they're doing on the pitch.
Yeah, it's something that as a United fan you'd worry about Pogba coming back into the side and a bit of a rot returning to the side.
But a winning side, it's something that Damien Delaney mentioned on the football show a few weeks back, where he described him as a joiner-inner, where when things are going well, Pogba's great. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. If you play him against the smaller sides that United are struggling to beat, he is the kind of player that has that creative spark in him, that can play the pass that United have been missing against those smaller sides. He can split defences with his passing, one touch, bang, 50-yard pass over the top, and Rashford's in. But against his bigger sides, you don't want him taking 1 or 2 touches, slowing it down, trying to turn players, and he does that too many often
flicks
against
and tricks in dangerous positions, and he has that in his locker. And you can get away with it against an Aston Villa or a Watford or something, but if you were to do that against Liverpool, City...
Yeah, exactly. For example, if he does that against the smaller sides who are playing defensively anyway, you can afford to do that. You can slow the game down, control it a bit more, but if you wanted to play the football that United were playing against City and then against Tottenham and then against City, Pogba's the worst player for that, because he's going to take the extra touches, and he's going to slow the game down.
So basically, Solskjaer has to say, look, Paul, we think you're great. We're going to rest you for the really big games. I'm just going to play you against the so-called lesser teams.
Yeah, well, if they kept Lukaku this year as well and only played him against the smaller sides, United would be in a much better position this year.
Yeah. Well, look, they're on a good run. That game at Old Trafford, 2 o'clock kickoff, United Everton. And you can also hear that game on Off the Ball and News Talk. Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr are going to be at Old Trafford for that 2 o'clock kickoff. Looking at some of the other fixtures, interested to get your thoughts on the Chelsea-Bournemouth game. Things, Raf, have levelled off a little bit for Chelsea. They got the win they needed in the Champions League during the week against Lille, albeit a second-string Lille team who had nothing to play for. But is this something that we should expect, given that it's a young team and certainly a work in progress, that there's going to be inconsistencies?
Oh, of course, yeah. They're extremely callow in that sense. I mean, Tammy Abraham and Mason Mount, who have been brilliant this season, were playing in the Championship last season. So this is this Premier League season. It's a free hit for them in a way, but it's also something where they're still trying to gain experience, and they're learning as they go along. Obviously, they have a few experienced names around them, like Willian, who will help them through, but I wouldn't expect Bournemouth to cause them much trouble just with the injury crisis they have. So even if Chelsea aren't quite as vibrant as we have seen at certain times of the season. They should still have enough, especially at Stamford Bridge.
Bournemouth, I'm looking at the table, they're just getting dragged down towards the relegation zone end. This happens with Bournemouth a lot, though, since they've been in the Premier League, where you think, oh, they could go, and then they can get a few wins together. But there's a little, as Ralph alluded to there, they've an injury list, and you know they're bang out of form.
You'd wonder how long Eddie Howe is going to stay at the club, because I think he's currently the longest serving manager in the Premier League after Sean Dyche, or he might be just above Sean Dyche in that sense.
Sean Dyche would have been out of the league for a season, but Eddie Howe obviously left Burnley.
Yeah.
And Sean Dyche took over.
Yeah. So it's like Bournemouth have always been inconsistent, playing great football. Eddie Howe is clearly a good manager.
Is he?
But he's also
he keeps getting linked. Say we talked about Everton there. Obviously Duncan Ferguson's in caretaker charge. Eddie Howe gets linked with these jobs because he plays a certain way, but they're always hopeless at the back.
Terrible at the back, and he has spent a lot of money. That's the thing. People think that Bournemouth have just somehow managed to survive in the Premier League. They've spent a ton of money, over 100 million at least.
Most of it to Liverpool.
Yeah, they spent 18 million on Jordan Ibe a couple of seasons ago. Solanke was around the same price as well. Neither of those have kicked on to do anything great for Bournemouth. Ake was probably their last brilliant signing, because he's probably going to move on to a bigger club.
Back to Chelsea.
Maybe this year.
Yeah, well, he's obviously injured at the moment, and they're looking at 6 weeks without him.
Yeah, and he's probably the biggest issue they're having at the minute, because he is their best defender. So it's just hard to see where Bournemouth will pick up results going forward because at the back they don't have anybody. They had a weak enough defence with their first defence. Now they're playing their third or fourth best defensive line. So
okay, before we go, didn't mention Wolves Tottenham. That's a game actually that's going to be really interesting. It's on Sunday, and that's obviously moved. It's a 2 o'clock kickoff because Wolves were in Europa League action into the last 32. They are. That's going to be a nice test for Jose Mourinho. You know, there was very little pressure on the game against Bayern Munich during the week because we knew what was going to happen. He rested players.
Yeah, but didn't bring on Troy Parrott, which was really disappointing.
When he brought on Wanyama ahead of Troy Parrott, see, is he really going to give Troy Parrott a chance? The whole giving him the ball, this is all for show. And I guarantee if you ask Jose Mourinho in January, we've got some money here, what would you want? He wants a striker. He wants, there was talk of him trying to get Dzeko. So Troy Parrott, and look, that's not a criticism necessarily of Jose Mourinho. Would Pochettino have given Troy Parrott first team football in the Premier League this season? It's very difficult for a teenager to dislodge the player that is going to eventually going to become the all-time leading scorer for Tottenham.
Yeah. And he's only 17.
Yeah. But to give him minutes here and there, where you've games won, or a game like the Bayern game where the result it's a dead rubber. The result doesn't matter either way. There was nothing to lose there, and it was just a bit disappointing because we were all waiting for that. We saw him on the bench and we thought it's going to happen. And of course,
his lovely suit before the game, and you thought, he's got his game face on.
I mean, it's brilliant to see him coming through, but he is 17. The one thing you'd worry about is that he is demolishing in the youth leagues. Like he's in the Champions League.
They got hockeyed without him.
Exactly. In the Champions League, the Youth Champions League, he's been scoring 2 or 3 goals a game. Yeah. So if he stays there too long, he's going to end up being a bit of a bully in that league and not really progressing at senior level. So you need him to get senior football.
And none of that Premier League 2 football, because there's no intensity to that. He'd be better off going to the Championship, where defenders, whether they like it or not, are going to give him a bit of a kicking. But what we've seen, especially from the New Zealand game with Winston Reid, he can kick.
Exactly. He's
no bother.
If you ever look at, I don't know if you've seen him in person, but he's massive.
Yeah.
He's 17 and he looks like a fully grown 27-year-old. Yeah. Like, he looks like an established striker. So the best thing for him would be to go on loan to a side, but only to a side that's going to play him. There's no point in him going to a side that's going to leave him on the bench and bring him on here and there, because he can get that in Tottenham.
Yeah. Will Tottenham beat Wolves? That's at Molyneux.
I think so. Yeah. Wolves don't tend to rotate as much, and they have a smaller squad as well.
Do you know what? I'd agree, and I think they're coming off the European football, but
they've dealt with it reasonably well.
They beat City.
Yeah.
They beat City And I remember talking to somebody who was at their European game and said they looked jaded tonight. And then the following Sunday, they went and beat City 2-0. It really, I suppose it depends on how Adama Traore plays.
He's playing excellent this year. They were a wee bit unlucky against Brighton last week. I thought Brighton were quite good.
Great game, yeah.
Yeah, it was a brilliant first half, and then the second half kind of petered out. But it's going to be a difficult enough one for Tottenham. I would say they'll probably pull off a result though.
Okay, the other fixtures I didn't mention we didn't get a chance to get around to them. Burnley, Newcastle, that's 3 o'clock tomorrow. Sheffield United and Aston Villa. And then the 5:30 game, Southampton, West Ham. You wonder, whoever loses that one, would they be in danger of losing their job? It seems that Ralph Hasenhüttl has turned things around slightly anyway, with a few wins in the last few weeks, but Pellegrini definitely a man under pressure. That is our lot for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back at midday next Friday. Until then, take care.
The Paddy Power Half Hour on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.